Some pretty big news out of Gen Con yesterday was that Wizards of the Coast announced that Universes Beyond is now coming to Dungeons & Dragons. And on stage, it had this little explainer beforehand.
Today, we're announcing Dungeons & Dragons Universes Beyond, a hand-picked collection of some of the best collaborations across gaming, entertainment, books, and more. But one thing I do want to make sure everybody hears, this is additive to the roadmap we have for our own worlds. We are expanding what D&D can be, not taking anything away.
And the thing is, people were cheering for stuff prior to this. Trisha Helfer had just been out to talk about her voicing a new character in a D&D video game, so the audience was reacting. So I just want you to listen one more time to how the audience reacts to the announcement of Universes Beyond coming to D&D, because it ain't a positive buzz.
Today, we're announcing Dungeons & Dragons Universes Beyond. A hand-picked...
Of course, some people are going to be okay with this, some people are going to be less okay with this. It's the in-shitification of everything. It's the crossover of everything. It's the slopification of everything. I don't quite prescribe to that, because the reality is some things are better at this than others, and Dungeons & Dragons is probably the most well-suited for this, because, like they said, it is kind of additive, right? I guess before we really unpack it, we should talk about which ones were announced. We've got D&D x World of Warcraft, okay, sure, and D&D x Star Wars, which had very few bits of information revealed at the keynote. It is additive in D&D in a way that it isn't in Magic. Like, the argument is that, like, with Magic, they release more sets than ever now, and most of those, or half of those, are Universes Beyond. But the point is, when they started to put it through Standard, it meant that you could not ignore Universes Beyond cards that show up in Standard, Modern, Legacy, Commander. Every single place that you wanted to play it, other than a, like, self-contained limited environment, would have Universes Beyond in it, so you could not ignore the new stuff. D&D is quite different to that. If your table, your group, your local session is playing a World of Warcraft themed thing, you're playing a World of Warcraft themed thing. If they're playing a Star Wars themed thing, they're playing a Star Wars themed thing. Or if they're playing in the realms of Faerun or whatever the main D&D world is, you're there. Of course, certain rules might move across. People might want to play a Demon Hunter in the Warcraft sense, in the normal D&D campaign, and that's absolutely fine. You can kind of homebrew and move things around all you want. What I'm saying is that Arthas and Illidan aren't going to rock up to your Tales of the Sword Coast adventure or your Ravenloft adventure and start pissing on your parade. It is funny, though, to see Hasbro go whole hog on the Universes Beyond thing. The real reason behind it is that Universes Beyond has been a huge success for just making a shit ton of money. There really do be money in those hills. They talk about new players and bringing new players to D&D through IPs that they love, and I think there is a truth to that, but I do not think that is the motivation. The motivation is making the line go up with absolutely no consideration for anything else. I guess those two things can exist together and happen together. You can have new players come to the game and grow the hobby, as it were, and you can have Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro make shit tons of money. Remember, Magic the Gathering is the primary, if not one of the only places that Hasbro makes any money. So if Wizards of the Coast can replicate that into Dungeons & Dragons, of course, then they're excited to do so. Personally, I think the Universes Beyond project or method of IP synergization, whilst I think it fits in D&D a little bit better because you can do self-contained worlds and self-contained stuff, I don't think it's the money printing machine that Hasbro have seen with Magic the Gathering. You aren't going to get people come across and try and get autographed Kirk cards or one-of-one rings or anime waifu Final Fantasy cards. A lot of people are gonna like curiously thumb through the book in a game store and that'll be it. Like, there's no collectible element here. With Magic, you can just buy a pack and have some cards that now exist in a drawer or a folder or similar. And I think that collectibles market, which is kind of borrowed from the Pokemon style of hype, that doesn't exist in D&D. I'm not saying it won't bring new players in and it won't push their line up, but I predict it will not see the meteoric growth that Magic the Gathering has seen because it just doesn't work in the same capacity. If you're watching this video and you found it fun, informative, interesting, exciting, arousing, any kind of thing that made you happy in some capacity, why don't you click the subscribe button? I don't remind people to do this very often, and I should do it more, because more people should subscribe because it makes me look cool on the internet. So they showed off that the world of Azeroth is coming to D&D. I'm not really sure if there's ever been a crossover like this before. On a cursory Google, I didn't see anything. I know that World of Warcraft has its own tabletop RPG at one point in the past. And there was just this one bit of art here, this bit that just looks like nothing like Warcraft at all. It's almost like it's funny. Like I would complain about them using existing assets and similar whilst doing this, but this piece of art here, which doesn't feel like it's in the style of original Warcraft, doesn't feel like Warcraft. But it's an outlier, and the rest of them do feel like Warcraft, even if they are are a slightly different style to what the art you'd see in Hearthstone or even the visual style of World of Warcraft itself, these do feel and look very World of Warcraft. The orcs look like Warcraft orcs. Arthas looks like the Lich King. Personally, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm not really into tabletop RPGs right now. I was an avid D&D player for years, by the way. Rob, that some of you might know from when I used to do Monday night streams, used to hang out on here, and he's been on the channel quite a bit. He was my DM for like 5 years through uni and afterwards. We played like an entire campaign from like 0 to 20 of 4th edition and played a load of 3.5 as well. But between board gaming, Warhammer and tabletop miniature gaming and card gaming, I don't have time for TTRPGs right now. And World of Warcraft is not the one to pull me back in. I love Warcraft 3 with an absolute passion, especially the original release, not the re-release. But I don't like MMOs, and I bounced off World of Warcraft hard, so none of this really excites me very much. There is the interesting idea of like, does this mean that we'll get this in Magic, which I'll come to at the end of the video, or the last part of the video. But let's mention Star Wars for a moment. This, again, doesn't entice me to get into TTRPGs, but it is an interesting thing from the geek ecosphere perspective. The announcement was weird. Whilst the World of Warcraft 1 had this elaborate CGI trailer, which mixes D&D iconography with Warcraft iconography, the Star Wars 1 was cut to black, Vader noise, lightsaber pop, which is pretty hype. That's a good way to start a trailer. But then it was just I mean this in the nicest possible way, because the cosplay was good, but I say the nicest possible way for the cosplayer, but not for the company. A cosplayer walks on stage with a lit lightsaber, a overhead light shines onto them, which kind of ruins the whole light against the darkness thing, and then it cuts to the logo. That's it. This struck me as a very hastily rushed together, perhaps filmed on the Wednesday or Thursday before Gen Con on a stage with a cosplayer video, because this license only just went through and this deal only just got signed. It had none of the polish of the World of Warcraft announcement. Now, the World of Warcraft announcement did say that everything was coming out in November, so it's like a done deal and things have been made and printed. They're probably on a shipping container getting into the US right now, where Star Wars had like no details and will be sometime next year, I imagine. So yes, of course, they are different stages in the development, but this feels so rushed in terms of a PR thing that I feel like this contract might have been signed like this week or last week. So does this mean that we're gonna get Blizzard, Warcraft or StarCraft and Star Wars in Magic the Gathering? I think that's a distinct possibility. On the Warcraft side of things, I don't think Magic and Hearthstone are really competing like they used to. There's a point in the industry where the digital client for Magic the Gathering, Arena, was definitely competing with Hearthstone because everyone wanted to be the next esport like Hearthstone, and by all margins, I think Wizards of the Coast and Arena failed in that capacity. Not that Arena itself is a failure, I'm sure it makes them a lot of money. It's brought a lot of people to the game, and it's still a digital platform that people can play on. There's still a lot of merits to it in spite of predatory economies, but I do think that it failed in the esports aspiration. The world will know that next big esport was just not a thing. But I think the wallets of Hearthstone players and Magic players and D&D players are very, very different. So will this come to Magic? I think so. I would be very surprised if we don't see a World of Warcraft release in some way, whether it just be tie-in secret layers or full set, I don't know. Chris Cox, the CEO of Hasbro, has spoken in the past about how he believes that the best fits for Universes Beyond, or at least the best fits that, from a perspective of selling very well, are the things that are like fantasy adjacent or fantasy aligned, and Warcraft obviously ticks that box. My worry is sometimes that, going back to this art, it doesn't really distinctly look different enough to Magic itself to really be novel enough. I spoke about this a little bit with The Hobbit, where we've already done Lord of the Rings, so some of that novelty's already gone, and then a lot of the Hobbit stuff just feels like things that could be in other sets, bears and goblins and wolves. It just feels like it could have just been Magic, which is a low key on the totem pole of like criticisms that I think Wizards of the Coast really need to take on board. It's quite low, but it's another thing that I think we might feel with World of Warcraft, because once you start like moving away from the art style, some of the stuff does feel a bit generic. Of course, that's not to say there aren't things that are very unique. That the orcs, for example, that's probably the one thing I'd like to see about like Blizzard's Warcraft come to Magic, is that we get some really fully well realized and fun orcs. I would have much rather the Warhammer orcs, if I'm honest, especially 40,000's variety of them, because orcs in Magic are kind of on the back burner to goblins and hardly ever show up. I'd love to see some cartoonishly big, but in this case, honorable orcs. I think that'd be could be quite fun. And then there's Star Wars. Now, if you didn't know, because you're watching this because you've somehow stumbled across and you're not a Magic fan, I watch my other content, Magic the Gathering has recently had 2 main sets. We're going to have at least 2 more, and we've had Secret Layers for Marvel, a Disney-owned property. So that working relationship already exists, and it's already supposedly doing quite well financially for Wizards of the Coast, even if the reception to the Marvel sets has been lukewarm in terms terms of Marvel superheroes and like hostile and like on fire in terms of Spider-Man. But if it's making money, who gives a fuck? That's obviously how Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro see it. So is there a discussion to have other Disney stuff come across? I imagine that Lorcana, which is like the main Disney IP card game by Ravensburger, might stop us getting a Mickey Mouse Secret Lair for a while. I don't know if Fantasy Flight's Star Wars Unlimited has that same weight. I personally think Star Wars Unlimited is an infinitely better game than Lorcana. It's far more interesting, nuanced, strategic. There's just so much more there. I really like Star Wars Unlimited. But I think in terms of money makers, I don't know the exact stats, but I imagine Lorcana is doing a lot more in terms of courting the casual crowd and the collector crowd. I mean, we had fights outside a game store here in the UK over some of the drops recently. So I think that's an indication that's going towards the Pokemon end of things in terms of collectors markets. And thus that hype means that Lorcana probably makes them a bit more money. Also, Fantasy Flight haven't got the best record for keeping games around. And also, like, they did the last lot of Star Wars RPGs with Wizards of the... Star Wars RPGs with the Star Wars IP, and they're dead, long dead. I don't know if really that has any bearing. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if Disney or at least Disney controlling Star Wars, are keen to keep exclusivity with another tabletop provider. Right now, like, provider, I mean a company, a publishing company, designing company. Fantasy Flight published their card game, but they've jumped to the big boy in the industry, Wizards of the Coast, to publish a tabletop RPG. I don't think they'd ever just stop doing Star Wars Unlimited to move to a WotC thing. I don't think WotC are interested in making individual card games either, but I can't imagine they'd leave the metric fuck ton of money that a serialized Darth Vader or Skywalker or Kenobi would bring to them on the table. Personally, this is the most exciting thing for me. Star Wars is up there. It's like Star Wars, Warhammer, DC are like my fucking favorite things in the world in terms of nerd shit. And I would be excited to see it on Magic the Gathering cards. I'm currently going through that with Star Trek, something that's in my A tier, not my S tier. So I would be excited. And Wizards have worked with Lucasfilm or whoever the technical owners were prior to Disney in the past, right? Like the last tabletop RPGs for Star Wars that Wizards published were around 2010s, at which point the license lapsed and Fantasy Flight started working with them. Fantasy Flight haven't published anything since 2019, I believe, in the TTRPG space, I mean. So it's not a relationship they haven't had in the past, and I do think it does open up that possibility of moving across to Magic. I recently talked about how Nintendo have done a deal to do Zelda toys with Hasbro, and that opens up conversations around Nintendo stuff showing up in Secret Lairs and Universes Beyond for Magic the Gathering. I still strongly believe that is a distinct possibility of part of the contractual conversations they're having. Hasbro aren't going to make a toy deal and not consider taking the golden goose that they've got and ask if they can feed it some of that Nintendo flavored corn. I haven't talked about corn in the video without it being like a pun for porn in quite some time, but this is more direct, right? This is a literal Star Wars being done by one side of WotC and the other side is stood there with the money making printing machine. It's not abstractly Nintendo doing one property with Hasbro and then me saying, which I did say in the video, wow, what if we get Pokemon Magic cards? This is a lot closer. So I am expecting the next 2 years to see Star Wars Magic the Gathering cards, and it's going to be big business for collectors at the very least. From a game perspective, which is the bit I care about the most, even though I've talked a lot about collecting and markets and money and shit in this video, I don't know, Universes Beyond is just ongoing. Magic the Gathering taking a step back from making it 60% of the whole game to 50%, so that's good. And I guess D&D is making it, I don't know, it's 2 out of 5 releases, I think it was on the roadmap. So it's not 50% of releases, but again, they're releasing it alongside the other stuff, and you can kind of just ignore this. It's not going through a standard rotation thing. I say this, if you play D&D out our shop in the Adventurers League, I think you are stuck playing World of Warcraft for the next couple of months, because that's the stuff that will be sanctioned and endorsed. But again, game stores can kind of ignore that and just play the normal stuff if you wanted to, right? It feels less invasive in D&D is what I'm saying. Meanwhile, Magic the Gathering is just a hodgepodge mess. If you are watching this and you don't follow Magic, I'll leave you with this fact. The Fantastic Four's Fantastica is one of the strongest artifacts and or creatures, technically, in the entire game of Magic now. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one, dickheads. Ta-ta for now.